Hey, I'm Dr. Elad Granot. I'm an entrepreneur, investor, and dean of Cleveland's Business School, the prestigious Boler College of Business at John Carroll University. This show is designed for those who think differently. We talk candidly about innovations in technology, in startups, venture capital, the global economy, higher education, how to lead, how to fail. We will leave no stone unturned. Expect passionate and sometimes controversial conversations with guests from all over the business spectrum once every month, wherever you stream your podcasts. Today's episode covers what it's like to work at Goodyear. It covers innovation, technology, so much more. We will talk candidly with Erin Spring, who's Senior Director of Material Science at Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. And this is Bottom Line with the Business Dean. Before we do that, before we talk to Erin, a couple of hot takes from me. I have two actually, and I'll start with the second one. So I had a conversation this morning with someone who was asking me about ROI for higher ed. Is higher ed worth it? And then I said, let's talk about the MSRP for cars. And the response was, well, which car? And I said, well, which higher ed? You can't just go through some sort of categorical analysis and tell me that a degree in chemistry is expected to have the same ROI as a degree in philosophy. And yet, the tuition model of higher education in general is you pay for an undergraduate education. And so I understand where the question comes from, is higher education worth it, or what's the ROI on higher education? And that's because the price or the investment is broadly equivalent across disciplines, but the ROI isn't. And so it really is incumbent on those pursuing higher education to look into, is this going to be worth it in terms of if they're looking at ROI? And just can't believe I'm saying this as a capitalist, but ROI is more than just dollars and cents, right? You need to look at what is your passion, where you're trying to go, what are you trying to achieve, and see if that's worth it. But just generally speaking about ROI for higher education gets me a little bit in defensive mode, and also immediately in an offensive mode, saying, well, you know what, let's talk about more specifically. And then I can tell you as a business school dean that the ROI on a business education, whether it's your undergraduate education or if you choose to pursue something else for your undergraduate education, a professional degree in other fields such as science, medicine, nursing, you name it, then an MBA is probably a very good idea for you. So if you ask me about the ROI for higher education in business, yes, it's worth it. And that's hopefully going to be the end of that conversation. The second thing I want to talk about, maybe connected to that, is an article that came out this week in The Economist, which is going to be in the show notes. And the title, basically, I'll read it to you. The title says the following: America's economic outperformance is a marvel to behold. And so, yeah, we are number one by far. Don't worry about it. Keep working. Keep innovating. We really are the world's leading economy, will be for the foreseeable future, probably multiple generations. Yes, there are attacks, as there should be in free markets. And yes, there are challenges, but we are by far the world's leading economy. There's not even a close second. As The Economist itself says, a marvel to behold. And these are my hot takes for today. So now I'd like to welcome Erin. Erin has been with Goodyear for 18 years, and she and I met, I think, at an Ohio X event. We share a passion for technology in general and technology in Ohio, and I'm thrilled that you took some time out of your busy schedule to be with us. So, Erin, thank you for being here. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to this conversation and picking up where we left off. I think it's almost a year ago when we had the opportunity to meet.
Yep. Yeah. And so, by the way, the hot takes are I get to throw my ideas all over the place. If you want to react to either the ROI in higher education issue and or the U.S. economy being a marvel to behold, this is the time.
Hey, those are some great hot takes. It's especially the second one is fantastic to hear. And I think maybe we'll even talk a bit about that, how, we're going to continue to innovate to set us up for the next 100+ years. And on the first one, I have to say, given that I'm a chemical engineer, but I got my business degree, definitely have seen at least the return on investment for myself and what it set me up to contribute at Goodyear and elsewhere. So,
Well, thank you. I always like it when people agree with me. So
yeah, there you go.
I
don't know the rest of the time if I will, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not expecting some sort of long time commitment, but we're starting on the right foot. So, Erin, give us, all three of my listeners, give us give us some background about yourself as far back as you want to go. That's relevant to today's conversation. How'd you get to where you are today?
All right, that could take some time. I feel I'm getting up there in years, especially. I am starting year 19 at Goodyear, and everyone tells you it goes by quickly, and it really does. I joined Goodyear right out of undergrad as a chemical engineer. Thought I'll stick around a couple of years, get some good experience on my resume, and who knows where that will take me. And it's been an exciting journey ever since. Had the opportunity to do my MBA at University of Akron while I was working at Goodyear, and had the opportunity to identify what are some of those challenges we have to work on for the future. In the beginning, I was working actually on a lot of taking a lot of the data that we had and building predictive models to use in product development. So I always joke that I, built neural network machine learning models before they were cool. Now I'll say the ones people are building today are much more robust and advanced, but you could see the promise in data even at that time. And then, throughout my career, the really interesting thing that has happened is the intersection of, technology from a software perspective, colliding with the automotive industry and really rethinking what the automotive industry should look like instead of necessarily just about the car, right? But the experience of getting from point A to point B in a more efficient manner, hopefully a more enjoyable manner and safer. And so that led me to actually like the last 10 years of my career at Goodyear, where we've been building new solutions to meet the changes that are occurring in the industry. What are some of those new unmet needs that Goodyear needs to meet, not only around tire products, but around adding potentially digital information to our products to unlock something for our customers, or building even new software based companies to meet the needs of some of these emerging customers. So that has been a really interesting journey. Had the opportunity at the same time to start our investment fund so that we could really get top insights of what's going on in mobility through being an investor, and accelerating some of the partnerships that we needed. And then also launched a couple new businesses in the what we call beyond tire space. So that's been a very interesting journey. And actually, just in the last couple months, I was asked to lead our material science organization. So kind of coming full back to where I started in the organization. And that's another area where all the materials that go into our tire products are very important to deliver the promise of our products to our end customers, whether that's an aviation tire for landing, a consumer passenger vehicle tire, or commercial truck tire. Very important. And one of the big challenges we have as an industry going forward is a lot of those materials come from petroleum derived chemicals. And we are working very diligently on, hey, I like to call it, what's our next tech stack with respect to materials for tires that are much more sustainable. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Happy to touch on any of those topics as we
Oh
go
yeah,
forward.
there's so much here to unpack. Thank you for that. So I'm gonna start one at a time, see how far we can get.
All right.
I'm obviously, or maybe obvious to me, really curious about the development, the evolution from a chemical engineer to having business responsibilities, right? And obviously, at some point, it was appropriate to pursue and earn an MBA. And I'm going to give you my uninformed assumption of how that works, and then you can confirm it or completely destroy it. But my assumption is someone like you is a wonderful chemical engineer, and then opportunities come their way for promotion, for maybe more interesting things or more diverse things to do in the organization that require skills beyond chemical engineering. And those skills usually would have to do with business skills, budgets, processes, people, among other technology, obviously. And then what do? Right? You're a fantastic chemical engineer, but you have none of that background, none of that training. So you decide to pursue an MBA. Not a John Carroll, but we'll let that one go. And so tell me how that works. Because what I'm trying to think about is, and we'll get to that maybe later, in general, I'm trying to think about folks who are in non-management positions, right? And so doing whatever they're doing, specializing in whatever they're specializing in, but are also starting to think about opportunities and develop their skill set and maybe position themselves better in such a competitive marketplace to take advantage of opportunities, and are considering the fact that they don't have a business background and or education. Tell us about that thought process, how that went.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think at the core of my thought process, I did my MBA when I had been at the company probably 3 to 5 years, and I always really gravitated towards this intersection between business and technology. You know, why are we building a certain technology? What's the value that it's going to either bring internally to the organization or to a customer? And I thought, hey, how do I go down that path where I can learn more about that interest that I have? And the upside to that is it's going to provide more opportunity for me. And so I actually just started taking a few business courses. And I said, yep, this is something that's really interesting to me. As much as I like solving technical problems, I wanted to understand that bigger picture and help drive the strategy, which typically comes from, what business problem are we trying to solve? What customer problem are we trying to solve? And then you do that with technology. So that's kind of where my passion always was. And I think that's one of those things when people ask me, how did I get to where I'm at? I always kind of said, oh, that's kind of really interesting to me. I think there's a lot of value to the world to go down that path. How do I go learn more? So, for example, or how do I hire the right people who know a lot more than I do so we can go after solving those problems? So that was a big part of the thought process. Is how do I kind of open my aperture a bit and understand the broader picture, so we can head in the right direction.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. So it goes back to what I was saying before about ROI, right? And if there's one, I don't think anyone debates the ROI of an MBA, and which explains why it's the number one graduate degree worldwide. It simply works. What's interesting, one more thing I was ranting about at a different podcast was that an MBA in the Midwest is not like an MBA on the East Coast or the West Coast. You get a lot of chatter. I don't know if a lot of people, but a lot of chatter from tech giants saying, drop out of college, come here, we'll teach you how to do it. There's no need for college. And that may be right for them. If you founded Tesla, you may not need an MBA. And if you are on the West Coast, on the East Coast, and you have a variety of opportunities. But I think in the Midwest, an MBA really goes a long way. So getting that confirmation from you is widely appreciated. I want to talk to you about another thing that you brought up, and that is the intersection of technology and industry. And you used the term rethinking. So I want to talk about that, but set the ground for that conversation. So how long has Goodyear been around? Over 100 years?
Yes, we're pretty excited to say this is our 125th year, so it's a big year for us.
Congratulations, 125 years. And so higher education's been around just a little bit longer, but I'm wondering if you could confirm to me that when an organization, an enterprise, has been around for a long time, it develops traditions, some of which entrench the enterprise in a place where it probably shouldn't be entrenched. And so then you have a political issue of pointing that out and saying, well, we should be doing other things. We should be, as you say, rethinking. We should be, and then the political issue mushrooms into, well, you are crazy and you're trying to work ourselves out of a job. And so there are some parallels. I don't want to share all the frustrations with higher ed, but once you get entrenched, being in a place where you're trying to innovate from the inside, right? And so for I think for decades, certainly before the last few years, organizations such as higher education institutions, Fortune 500s, and others would hire consultants to tell them how to be innovative, right? And then eventually it evolved into, wait a second, we need to do this from the inside, which is going to be my next question I want to talk to you about your previous position. But tell me a little bit about the importance of rethinking within the context of the intersection of technology and industry.
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
Oh yeah, I loaded it all the way up
for a whole podcast, right, or more. But the rethinking piece, and it all starts with. I'll probably keep going back to this. Is as an organization, looking out to first, you have to be open to looking out to how the world is changing and admit that it's changing is
it's a big
step one. And you might not know how fast that change is going to happen. So you're not going to know exactly when it's going to happen or exactly what is it going to look like. And it's, can be very ambiguous, right? But I think the step one is to admit that it's changing and it's happening. And if you don't respond, someday you're going to wake up and be irrelevant, right? And the risk is, all right, well, what if we invest too early and we change too early? Well, good, you're early and you might have an advantage. What if you don't invest versus what do you don't invest at all or you're late? And that is a much bigger risk. So I think we started kind of getting our heads around, hey, we know change is happening, and we know we want to lead for another 125 plus years. So how do we go tackle the fact that it might not look exactly like our business has looked for the past years? How do we take a more, hey, this is going to be an area that's more in, I'd call it startup or growth mode, which requires different skill sets, mindsets, than potentially our company that is extending our leadership in a mature business. So I think that second recognition was it's likely not going to take the same exact approaches with respect to product development, the types of technologies, or even some of the business thinking. And I think that was a key thing that kind of unlocked how we go after, I'd say, that startup growth mode versus a really important business of maintaining or growing even in the mature place, because that mature business is funding your next business. Sure. Yeah, so I think from a leadership perspective, it was important in making sure that you're kind of constantly having these conversations and the right mindsets from a leadership and team perspective.
Yeah, leadership is critical. It's really hard to drive a change like that, a shift like that, without senior leadership buy-in. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole podcast by itself. You mentioned that you need to realize and then admit, I think is the word you used, that change is happening. I can't help but think about some of my colleagues' reaction to ChatGPT when it came out, which was to initiate a petition to ban it from higher education. And I I really, at this point, I believe anything. But all I could think about was, back in the 60s, math teachers were trying to ban calculators from math classes, and that's about as silly as it looks. About just the same. We shouldn't be trying to think about how to not use or to ban technology. And I say, to anybody who is willing to listen, if you're teaching your class in a way where a student can cheat with Chat GPT, you're doing it wrong. You've probably been doing it wrong for years, if not decades. And it's a good thing that this technology came around. Maybe you should figure out how to teach it with it rather than ban it. It's impossible to stop progress. It's banned. It's bound to fail. And so, I wrote down realizing change is happening, and then an even stronger word, admitting it, is the first step in really trying to innovate.
Yeah, and I think framing something like Chat GPT in that way, okay, how does this drive us to be better in the classroom potentially? Or, we have many of those same conversations and say, well, how might we leverage it to improve the learning experience, or in our case, to improve our product development times?
Yeah. And so I want to segue into. We have a few minutes left. I want to talk about your previous position that you just recently left, and that is you mentioned two things that I thought were really cool for such an established company. One is first of all, you had an innovation function within the company, but then you had an investment fund. So it wasn't just passive or internal innovation, as if that wouldn't be enough. It would be. It's quite impressive. But you had an investment fund, and then you had launches out of that fund. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about the philosophy. We discussed what the recognition is that you need to have it. But once you have it in place, tell me how that works, and tell me about how you choose investments and what maybe a success story.
Yeah. So we founded our fund in 2020, January 2020.
Perfect.
So that was a very interesting time, is what I'll say. We don't need to go into that, but with the idea of we need a different set of technologies that are going to meet the needs of a different type of customer in the future, and how do we make sure that we are able to strategically partner in the space? How might we also make sure that we're getting the most robust learnings so that we can build our strategies going forward? So, for example, typically in the past 125 years, we haven't had many customers of electric vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. Or even more so of autonomous vehicles. And the hypothesis is, guess what? These vehicles, the business models they operate within are going to be different than the ICE or combustion engine vehicles, the network of gas stations, etc. And we got to learn what those different needs are. And we want to have an opportunity to work together to better enable them, maybe with a Goodyear solution, or maybe just better enable these companies because we have a similar vision going forward. And so that was the crux of the investment fund. We committed $100 million to do that over several years. We've made about 15, 16 different investments in startups. It's really stage agnostic. It's all what is our right portfolio across a couple technology or what we call mobility areas. So electric, connectivity, autonomous, and shared transportation, pretty general. And then within those, obviously, we have a pretty thesis behind each of those trends. So one example I'll share with you where it was also how do we use some of these investments to learn about some of the active programs that we have internally. So we're also at the same time, we're making investments externally in startups. How are we making investments internally in our business technology portfolio, where we really think Goodyear has a unique place to play. And so one of those areas is in our tire intelligence portfolio. And we made an investment in a company called Gatic AI. They are an autonomous trucking company that operate in the middle mile. And we are excited about them because, yes, a lot of hype around driverless technologies. How long is it going to take? But we believe if you're able to reduce some of those degrees of freedoms, operate maybe at slower speeds on set routes, for example, move goods instead of people, we think that there is an earlier use case for that. So we invested in this Gatic AI and quickly learned that one of the things they need help with is better information about the condition of the road. What is it a wet road? Is it snowy conditions, icy conditions? And at the same time, we have a technology in our tire intelligence, we call it Goodyear Sightline, where we're able to, through information from the tire and from the vehicle, provide road friction estimate and provide that back to our customer. And so, yes, starting with an investment, identified what that unmet need is, and then we are actively piloting that new technology in the market. Whereas in the past, it would honestly be hard to do that through a peer kind of partnership model in these early phases. And so those are the types of successes we're seeing through this approach.
That's extremely cool. And I have my new favorite term, tire intelligence.
There we go.
Yes. So I want to wrap up and ask you a question that's connected, but a little bit sort of from a different perspective. Most of my guests on the podcast have been women in business. And as a business school dean, I'm very supportive of our Women in Business student club, entrepreneurship club, in really trying to make sure, and especially in STEM, trying to make sure that there is a lot more representation and opportunity, which begins with access, but also begins with, I think, ambition, recognition, understanding of potential and where one could go. So any advice to young women who are looking to pursue a career in education in STEM?
Yeah, you like these loaded questions. I mean, plenty to say. I think, the number one thing, I kind of said it at the beginning, kind of find where some of your passion lies. I even early in my career wrote lists of, what were the things I always did, always prioritized my time around versus the things I did not like to do. How do you just find the opportunity to do more of those things and make sure that you can assert yourself? It sometimes is, can be intimidating to be the only female in the room. But I just ask you, try not to let that stop you from being the only female in the room and going after those areas that you're really interested in. Find that network of those people who support you. I think early in my career, I had a lot of men who supported me, even from simple things. I mean, people who, took me aside and said, every meeting, I don't want you to sit along the wall. You need to sit at the table. I mean, it's as simple like that. So find those people, men, women who kind of support you along the way, and recognize even some of those small pieces of advice are really can be key.
That's priceless advice. Thank you. Mentorship is I think it's not underappreciated, but I think a lot of people don't necessarily discuss it as much as they should. Finding the right mentors throughout your career and your life really goes a long way. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I told you we try to stick to 30 minutes. How do we do on time, Connor? Are we close to 30?
You are like 4 minutes over, but we'll cut you some slack.
All right. That's not bad. I've done worse. So I appreciate your time, Erin. Thank you so much for being on this. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person really soon. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Hey, so thanks for joining us for The Bottom Line with the Business Dean. If you liked what you saw and you liked what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review. And be sure to check out the Boler College of Business on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for more of what's happening with the Business Dean. That's me. And we'll see you next time.